Well, James Gunn has finally broke the silence on what he's got planned for the next 8 to 10 years of the DCU. His choices are interesting, shall we say. However, far more interesting is what he's had to say about the previous 10 years or so of the DCU. So James posted a video to Twitter in which he laid it all out, and we're going to go through that piece by piece and then take a look at what he had to say about a former DCU, so stick around to the end for that. Before we dive in, do me a quick solid here, subscribe to the channel, like the video, turn on the notifications, you know how it is. Now, let's take a look.
Our jobs, mine and Peter's, is to come in and make sure the DCU is connected in film, television, gaming, and animation. That the characters are consistent, played by the same actors, and it works within one story.
So James comes out swinging by stating that everything is going to be connected, going so far as to say they're going to use the same actors, live action and animated. That and his other statement, however, quite revealing, because he apparently plans on not only connecting film and television, which was kind of known and a no-brainer, but animation and video game, which traditionally were completely separate. In fact, it could be argued the DC animated movies were much better than the live action versions. So of course that begs the first question, are the animated films going to suffer because of that? But more importantly, the second question, what on earth does that mean for the already established Reeves Batman and Todd Phillips' Joker, to say the very least?
Matt Reeves' Batman or Todd Phillips' Joker or Teen Titans Go, that it is clearly labeled as DC Elseworlds, outside of the mainstream DCU continuity.
Well, thank you for the answer there, James. However, you have just revealed the first crack in the armor, and it's a very, very big one. What did he say? He said, oh, well, those properties are going to be part of Elseworlds stories. Now, that means he's making the fatal mistake in assuming that people know what he knows. I'm sorry, your majority audience, and I'm talking 90% of the people that go to see Marvel Cinematic movies and, in theory, eventually, DCU movies, aren't comic book fans. They're really not. They don't know what an Elseworlds is. So I imagine there's quite a few people watching this tweet saying, what's Elseworlds? That's A. B, the very few that are going to look it up really aren't going to get it. And so that's going to leave the bulk of the people that are basically going to be very, very, very confused when we have got Robert Pattinson playing Batman in, will ostensibly probably be 2 films minimum, before we suddenly see a whole different Batman. When we had different Batmans in different times, Michael Keaton, Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, now Robert Pattinson, it was okay. But having 2 Batmans at the same time, I imagine that is going to be a problem for the bulk of the audience. Might actually end up kind of splitting the fandom in some regards. Which is your favorite? Because they don't understand the concept of Elseworlds, or that these are different universes, or whatever you want to call it. So saying that without explaining that is very dangerous. In fact, since it's already been established, and there's no way they have a copyright on this, he could have just said, we're going to be doing a sort of multiverse where we have, Pattinson's Batman taking place in one universe, but we will have our own Batman taking place in another universe. Maybe he says that later on in the clip. I don't know. I suspect, though, he doesn't, because, again, he's operating on the idea that everyone else knows what he knows, and that is a death knell.
The first project is Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos is an animated series. I've written all the episodes. Something we're going to do that's a little bit different at DC is we're going to have characters move into animation, out of animation, usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in live action.
Well, an animated Creature Commandos is, I believe, James Gunn's attempt to strike lightning in a bottle, not once, not twice, but 3 times. So obviously, he pulled it off with Guardians of the Galaxy. Part of the success of that, in all honesty, was casting. I mean, really, they had amazing people in those roles, and it was amazingly well written, although, again, he did have a co-writer on that. But, credit where credit is due, his Peacekeeper series with John Cena was very, very good. So, is he going to be able to pull, yet again, some characters from relative comics obscurity and make them a big to-do? The other kind of, quote, drawback, negative, whatever you want to call it, is animation. And I say that because, time and time again, it has been proven outside of children's animated films, adults don't generally, for whatever reason, gravitate towards animated products in the United States and over the age of 30. And I say that because, yes, I am fully aware of the awesomeness of anime. Don't get me started. That's my jam. I love that. I'm not going to diss that in the slightest, but I will fully admit I am an anomaly in that regard, in the fact that I am a little over 30 and I love it. Most aren't. And the peers and the people I've talked to aren't. They don't get it. They don't want to get it. And so they just don't relate to animated. So this, if he is marketing it for the younger people, is a further problem. And I'm not going to get into that at all. It's a whole different video, but there's been scientific research and everything else, blah, blah, blah. The younger set doesn't have the attention span or the desire to watch a 30-minute animated anything.
The next project up is Waller. This is a story of Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. Viola Davis is going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker.
Now, this is an interesting move, and I'm really not sure what the idea behind it is. Viola Davis, as Amanda Waller, is absolutely amazing. I don't want to take anything away from her at all. However, and has been very well shown, not only in the movies, but in the comic books, in all honesty, Amanda Waller is best handled in doses. She is best as a spice, right? Not the main course. And I understand him trying to combine this with his Peacemaker series, take that, roll that into either even more future success. She's already involved, I mean, in all honesty. But giving her own starring series, I'm not 100% on this. There's going to have to be something really clever going on to make us be engaged with Amanda Waller on a starring level, unless they alter up her character quite a bit. The character as it is isn't very interesting unless she is impactful when interacting, and that can only be on a minor basis. We'll see what they do with this one.
The true beginning of the DCU. This is called Superman Legacy. This is being written by me. I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time doing it. And Superman will be released into theaters July 11th, 2025.
All right, so now we have it. The official announcement about the big start of the DCU. Superman. This is the whole not going to cast Henry Cavill because I'm casting somebody younger. Superman Legacy. Not sure what the title is supposed to imply. He went on to state, I didn't quote it because it's pretty deep in, that this Superman would be all about truth, justice, and the American way. So that's a welcome return from the previous iterations, at least in the comic books, not so much the movies. And the date, 2025. So we've got a couple years before it's all rocking and rolling. We also have a rather interesting, I don't know if you want to call it gap year, because you see the existing DCU films, Flash, Aquaman 2, Blue Beetle, are happening this year. So nothing for 2024. I think maybe possibly a Matt Reeves Batman movie. I can't remember the release dates on that. Possibly, and more than likely, they're going to test the waters with TV shows. So probably one of the animated ones and one of the TV shows at bare minimum in 2024 to see how that sets up for 2025.
Okay, the next thing is a big premiere HBO television series called Lanterns. This is a story of a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and we have a few other Lanterns peppered in there, but this is really a terrestrial-based TV show, which is almost like True Detective with a couple of Green Lanterns who are space cops.
All right, so James drops a couple bombs in here. First and foremost, if you noticed, he mentioned, and this is the only time he's mentioned, this would be an HBO Max or HBO TV, HBO Max show. The others, he didn't say where they were going to be airing, but this one was specific to HBO Max. I suspect they have different plans for different platforms as well, which makes sense. The second one, though, is turning the Green Lantern into a True Detective style show. Once again, I'm not sure how much of a fan James is, but yes, the Green Lanterns are the policemen of a certain sector of space. It was almost never seen in the comics. And they mentioned it, don't get me wrong. It was a great excuse. Oh, Hal's off planet because he's taking care of this. But it was never really shown that much because the early writers realized it's not practical. If your beat, if you will, is a sector of space, and again, people don't really understand how vast space is. It is utterly a simplistic endeavor for someone to rob something on one planet and utilizing, the established comics lores of space travel, hyperdrives, everything else. Depending on the size of the sector of space, and that's another thing that hasn't been made entirely clear, they could have millions of planets. But let's be generous. Thousands of planets with hundreds of cities on each one of them to hide in. It would be impossible on every level to police something that vast. And that's why they never did it. My guess is they will be policemen on Earth. Nowhere else. Maybe one trip off world for some visuals. Otherwise, they're gonna ground it. Prediction, but we'll see.
Next is a big movie called The Authority. The Authority is a passion project of mine. It's based on the marvelous Wildstorm characters we are now bringing into the DCU and will interact with all of our primary DCU characters. The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. I think it's a very different look at superheroes.
Now this is a major bomb drop. Most people are not going to have any idea or clue, but the pedigree of writing team on The Authority is quite something. Starting off with Warren Ellis, following it with Mark Miller, and finally, briefly, with Grant Morrison. You can't beat that. The question is, which incarnation of the team is he going to run with? And are they really going to deal with some of the more adult themes that the series skirted around here and there? That's going to be the big question, because this would fall, ideally, on the R-rated side of things. And as of yet, Gunn's made no indication of whether they're going to stick to the tried and true PG-13 formula or mix it up a bit, throw in some Rs, but maybe the Rs are just going to be the elsewhere movies.
We're doing a television series called Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is the story of Paradise Island, usually known as Themyscira, which is the birthplace of Wonder Woman. It's almost like Game of Thrones with Westeros, but with all of the inhabitants of Paradise Island.
So obviously, with Wonder Woman being successful, I'm sure the studio heads are like, hey, come on, man, you gotta throw us a bone and at least keep one thing going. Now, no mention of whether there would be a Wonder Woman on this island or not, which was an interesting, deliberate statement/non-statement. However, stating that this is going to be a Game of Thrones type deal basically means that there's not going to be a lot of focus on action, let's be honest, because they're on an island. So it's pretty homogenized. They're not going to be encountering people from different lands. They're not going to be warring over territory. Most simplistic and easy, predictable plot device is, Wonder Woman's mom as queen has to fend off a challenge through political machinations, as opposed to ritual combat, which would be more in line with the Themyscirans we know from the comic books. So again, most likely a deviation.
The introduction of the DCU's Batman is The Brave and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold is the story of Batman and his actual son, Damian Wayne. This is based on Grant Morrison's great comic book run.
Okay, this is the one that probably has me most intrigued, from the standpoint that this was an actually excellent series from Grant Morrison. It really was. Personally, I hate Damian Wayne. Always hated Damian Wayne. He's such a little shit, but more importantly, he's completely overpowered and overconfident for a 13-year-old. I don't care if he was raised in the League of Assassins. It's still ridiculous. Question being, though, is what age will they put him at? And that is actually very important from the standpoint of, again, politics, political bullshit, politically correct bullshit. I don't know if DC is really going to do a movie where potentially a 12 or 13-year-old is getting beat up. Because if they go the other route, they make Damian Wayne 12, 13 years old, and he kicks ass, never has a bad guy lay a hand on him. It's really going to do a lot to destroy any hope of willing suspension of disbelief. So they kind of had their hands tied on this one. I'll be interested to see which direction they go.
Next up is a TV series called Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of comics' really popular cult heroes. He is a fascinating guy. He's a loser from the future who uses future technology to come back to present day and become a superhero so that people will love him.
All right, James may be selling it a little bit here. Booster Gold is not wildly popular in the comics. He is popular. He's interesting. He's good for a laugh. Let's put it that way. Somewhat maybe like Waller, although not nearly as much. He's really best handled in doses. I would hope that whatever TV series they put him in is a rather short run, like 6 episodes or so. That would probably be tolerable. That would create maybe a nice arc and get him out.
Superman is a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents, whereas Supergirl in this story, she is a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way, so she's a much more jaded character.
I should probably have a video or an image from this, but my Mary Sue flags are going off everywhere. The already overpowered Superman, Supergirl is now going to be a snarky, opinionated, attitude-filled teenager. What could be worse than that?
And that brings me to Swamp Thing, the last thing we're going to talk about. A very dark horror story in the origins of the monster who is Swamp Thing.
Well, they saved the best for last and the most transparent for last. I mean, this is humorous on so many levels. Basically, in a nutshell, some studio executive, hell, maybe even James Gunn himself, watched Werewolf by Night, saw how wonderful it was, saw the attention and accolades that they got, and said, we need to do that. And not only do we need to do that, but we need to do that with the very creature that Man-Thing was inspired for, or back and forth. They're the same creature. They're the same. They're not, they obviously have different stories and different personalities, but they're fundamentally the same. So they were like, it worked for them, it's got to work for us. It's just absolutely hilarious. Nonetheless, if James Gunn is involved in this, he didn't say he was writing it, but he can go back on his little horror roots, then I'm more than happy to take a look. All right, now we get down to it. So, James Gunn was being interviewed and was asked, what were your thoughts on DC movies before you came on board? And he said, the history has been shit. It's been a real fucked up journey for DC. I think that there was basically no one minding the mint, and they were giving out IP to any creatives that, smiled at whoever was in charge. There was never any real power given to the people in charge, and so somebody could always go over their head and do whatever they wanted. And, we had the DCEU, which then became the Joss Whedon Justice League, but it also became the Snyderverse, which became this, and we have Wonder Woman, and we have Wonder Woman 1984, which doesn't even match what happened in Wonder Woman 1. And then we have the Arrowverse, and even us, coming in with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, and then all of a sudden, Batmite is a real guy. Whoa, mad respect to James Gunn for telling it like it is. Or did he? And that is to say, what he said is true. However, I don't believe for a minute that it wasn't pre-planned. So hear me out. At the end of the day, the powers that be, at DC Warners, whoever, know that the former DCU property was a failure economically, which is all they care about. However, also was a failure to fans, which they're starting to equate with money. So instead of just off the cuff James Gunn ripping everybody, Patty Jenkins with Wonder Woman, the Batmite, the executives, he ripped everybody. But I think it was done for a reason. I think everyone knew up front that this was going to happen. Reason being is the fact that the previous incarnation was not successful. So what's a smart business move? Distance yourself from it. Distance yourself from it in the best and most concrete way that you can, which is what he's done here. He's not minced words. He's cursed. He's making a point. I am separating what I'm doing from that. So all of you that hate that, all of you that were disappointed by that, please give my product a try. Instead of just going, look, it's DC, it's Warner's, they don't know what they're doing, so I'm not even going to give Guns a try, which some people might be thinking. I think this is damage control. I think this is definitely nothing more than a, hey, we're not what came before us. But once again, and as always, merely my opinion. What do you think? Let's talk about it. Obey your king. Subscribe to the channel and click the notification icon.